In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, may the peace and blessings of Allah, the Exalted, be upon the Prophet Muhammad and his purified progeny, and may the damnation of Allah, the Exalted, be upon their enemies. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our second episode where we are continuing our discussion of Ghulu. We're continuing our discussion relating to those who exaggerated the status of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam and gave them divine lordship. We spoke about the hadith of Imam Ali alayhi salam where he talks about the two groups of people who will perish in his name. The first one being those who excessively love him, they're an extremist in their love for him, and the second group being those who show him enmity. And as we know, this was people such as the Nawasib or the Khawarij that we read about in history. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he knew that people will continue these deviant beliefs in the future. And of course, in his time, he also dealt with such people and he harshly condemned them. And there are even narrations suggesting that he punished those who raised him to the divine status of lordship. We also know that previous religions, they fell into exaggeration, such as the Nasara, the Christians, where they chose to worship Prophet Jesus, Isa, peace be upon him, rather than worshipping the God which Isa alayhi salam worshipped himself. So they exaggerated his status and did a type of Ghulu exaggeration where they started taking him to be their God and made him a part of the Trinity. We also see that there were extreme Sufis who also did Ghulu in the name of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. So, as we know, it is common for the Mukhalifin and Nawasib to define certain beliefs or statements as Ghulu. But we're not interested in one's subjective opinion or the opinion necessarily of the Mukhalifin. We want our standards to be based on the Quran and the Sunnah. And when we want to say that a particular statement is a ghulu, exaggeration pertaining to Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, we need to compare this to the sources. There are many who, when they say exaggeration, make statements which have no basis on any of the sources, the Quran or the Sunnah. In fact, these statements contradict both the Quran and the Sunnah. And of course, even non-Muslims themselves can come along and start laughing at some things in the Quran or some of the miracles or stories of the prophets, according to their subjective opinion. But we're not interested in this, and of course when we would come to debate them, we would see which standards they go by and which standards we can compel them to when debating them. So as I said, one of the presenters of the Mukhalifin, some of the brothers I know call him the A'udhu Billah guy.
Ibn Uthaymeen had a fatwa saying Allah jogs. A'udhu Billah, A'udhu Billah, A'udhu Billah, A'udhu Billah, A'udhu Billah.
Because when he heard about Allah Azza wa Jal jogging on one of his podcasts or on one of his videos, he said A'udhu Billah as his fitra came out. And then after that, what happened? He of course accepted this because according to especially the Salafi Aqidah, Allah Azza wa Jal gets bored, jogs and laughs in a way that befits His Majesty. So this guy is the one who presented the clip which we will show. And of course, one Shia brother actually showed the clip of him saying that A'udhu Billah when he heard about Allah Azza wa Jal jogging as being one of the sifat and attributes, and he actually tried to get this removed off the Shi'i brothers channel, because it was showing how shaken up he was about this belief. But anyhow, he showed a clip of one popular speaker in the Indian subcontinent. And as we know, dear brothers and sisters, as I said, as a Shia community, we should be ready to criticize, analyze and condemn particular speakers and look at clips, even if they be presented by Mukhalifin or Nawasib. And anyone, it doesn't matter whether he's wearing the clerical garbs or he's just a well-known speaker or he's not wearing the clerical garbs. As mentioned, the Ghulat, they come in many different forms. So any of them saying statements which contradict the Shia Aqidah, they have no value. And inshallah ta'ala, if you stay with us in later episodes, we will show Shia ulama who have condemn these types of statements. We will show some clips and examples of this in further episodes. So as we said, anyone who says types of ghulu has no value for us, and we will compare their types of statements to the sources. Now the first clip the Mukhalif guy showed in the clip was Zameer Naqvi. Now, as far as I know, I do not understand Urdu, but as far as I know, Zameer Naqvi is a popular speaker in the Indo-Pak world, and he has also been on TV in Pakistan before with one Mukhalifin cleric, where they were having a bit of a discussion, and this clip has been shared widely. Now, I saw the clip, and I don't believe Sayyid Hussein Qazwini would send condolences if he saw the clip and did not get a clarification, as he himself does not speak Urdu. But I saw the clip, and the first thing I did was to ask brothers about this clip who speak Urdu and to get some type of context. Now, although I heard there was another clip where Zameer Naqvi actually speaks about this statement, I haven't seen it being subtitled, so if any of the brothers can do that, it would be useful. But I saw the clip and I listened to the statements myself, and unfortunately these statements seem to be translated correctly according to brothers who speak Urdu, and they actually said yes, what statements were made in this clip are correct according to the subtitles. And of course we cannot trust clips from Mukhalifin or Nawasib, or we cannot trust many of these clips as they have taken them out of context, or they do not show the full context or mistranslate them. So inshallah ta'ala, let's show the clip and then we will speak about this particular clip which has been presented.
Unsurprisingly, regardless of his views, when Naqvi passed away, mainstream Western-based 12 Shia scholars came and offered public condolences and even praised him, such as Hussein al-Qazwini, who called him a scholar and a sincere servant of Ahlul Bayt. So before I get to the main point of this video, let's have a look at some of the views of this sincere servant of Ahlul Bayt.
कान में दुलदुल के जाने क्या बातें करती हैं और साल भर में पूरी हो जाती है। अरे हुसैन का शबी का घोड़ा जब दुआएं पूरी कर देता है तो हुसैन क्या है जो रब बन जाते।
Dear brothers and sisters, welcome back. So there is no doubt that some of the statements which were said in this clip were disturbing, especially anyone who is familiar with the Tawhid of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. They would be shocked at someone uttering such statements. And we find that this exaggeration about the Zuljana, the horse, is widespread. And he said things such as prostrating on the hooves of Zuljana, the Zuljana being the cause for the state of Pakistan. And leaving all of this aside, the most disturbing statement, which unfortunately seemed that he was uttering shirk, is when he said that something around the lines of, if the Zuljana can fulfill prayers or fulfill du'as, and as we know, this is all exaggeration again and nonsense, where people will make this status of a horse so big, and they say that you can ask your needs of a horse. All of this is a type of superstition which has no basis for us in Shia Islam, but unfortunately within the Indo-Pak region it has become widespread. And for those brothers who say, oh, you're attacking the Pak, no, I will also show some clips of Iranians as well, Farsi speakers, so no one can say I'm just focusing on the Indo-Pak issue. I'll be fair in that. But we find that this practice has become widespread of exaggerating the Zuljana, and the more disturbing statement after which we saw is where he says, if the horse can fulfill these types of requests, then what is Hussein, who becomes rabb? A'udhu billah. So on the apparent, and I asked again, I was fair and I asked brothers about this, who could not give me a context. It seems that he has called Imam Hussein alayhi salam rabb without any type of clear context, and has used this statement which would indicate that he is calling Imam Hussein alayhi salam Allah. A'udhu billah. And of course, as we know, the word rabb is for Allah Azza wa Jal. If someone would say just the word alone, rabb or ar-Rabb, it is denoting the Lord that all of us, we worship. So I saw this in the clip and I myself was shocked at this, and I could not find any type of context. And you see actually within the context of him talking about Zul Jannah, the status that he gives it. And then after that he speaks about Hussein alayhi salam, that what does he become? He becomes a Rabb. It was pretty clear to myself, unless any brothers can prove otherwise, what he was saying. So now the question comes, is it permissible to say Rabb for other than Allah Azza wa Jal? Because there seems to be confusion about this issue, and it's been often repeated. People have mentioned it on Facebook and social media networks. So I thought that we'll discuss this issue firstly of the clip. Is it allowed to call anyone else Rabb? If anyone applies this word in the divine lordship sense, which is only for Allah, to other than Allah, then such person is a kafir and a mushrik, a polytheist. There's no doubt about this amongst the Shia, and there is consensus on this. If anyone would call Imam Ali alayhi salam or the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa Rabb, and they mean this in the sense that they are gods, then this person is a kafir, mushrik, and special ahkam, rules would apply to such a person. So we know that some, as one scholar mentioned, some might say Imam Ali Rabbuna Yawm al-Qiyamah. He might say that Imam Ali is our Rabb on the Day of Judgment, just as a way to mock and annoy some of the mukhalifin, although this is not wise to say so, but they do not mean it in that type of sense. So again, can the Rabb be used for other than Allah Azza wa Jal? We will try to clarify this in the following episodes and within this episode. If we look in the Holy Quran, we see the word Rabb is used in another sense other than meaning for God in the divine lordship sense. If we look in Surah 12 verse 31, it says the following: Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya sahibay as-sijn, amma ahadukuma fayasqi rabbahu khamra. So we find that it says, O two companions of the prison, as for one of you, he as a servant will pour out wine for his Lord. So Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying what? Or he mentions to us Prophet Yusuf saying to these two people in the prison who he was in the prison with, O two companions of the prison, amma ahadukuma fayasqi rabbahu khamra. A prophet of Allah Azza wa Jal used the term Rabb for other than Allah. So we find that Rabb has a context also for other than Allah Azza wa Jal. And what's interesting about this verse as well when we analyse it is that he actually talks about the fate of these two people. So he says for one of them he will pour this drink for his Rabb, meaning like master or king, someone with authority over them. And as for the other, he will be crucified and the birds will eat from his head. So this is a type of knowledge from the unseen that Prophet Yusuf had, as demonstrated in this verse, and inshallah ta'ala we'll discuss this at a different time and elaborate on this. So what we can find again, and we recap on this, a prophet of Allah Azza wa Jal used the word Rabb in a non-Lordship sense, because linguistically speaking, Rabb can also mean, apart from Lord, it can mean master, governor, Lord in the sense of the non-divine Lord, like we say someone is like a Lord, owner, such as we say Rabbud Dar, someone who is owner of a residence, or a Lord meaning a nobleman or high-ranking person. So we see that the word Rabb has different meanings, and I'm not saying this to justify what Zameer Naqvi said. I'm saying this to discuss the matter which many have been asking about, whether the term Rabb can be used for other than Allah Azza wa Jal, and which context can this be used, and we will discuss whether this can actually be used for Ahlul Bayt or not. Another example we find is the Rabbul Usra, so someone who is a Rabb of his family, someone who has caretaking of them, authority over them. And we also see that the Imam is like the Rabb of Rabbul Ard, in the sense that he is a Hujjah and the earth needs him. Not the Rabb of the Ard, that he is the one who created everything and brought it into existence. No. We find that this linguistic meaning of Rabb denotes someone who is noble and someone who has a type of authority. Now the verse that we quoted, فَيَسْقِي رَبَّهُ خَمْرًا, that he will pour for his Rabb khamr, and this word has been used by one of the prophets of Allah, Prophet Yusuf. We find that the Tafsir, the Quranic exegesis books of the Mukhalifin, also agree about this meaning. For example, if we look in the Tafsir of Tabari, which is loved by the Salafis, and Tafsir al-Jalalain, we find that فَيَسْقِي رَبَّهُ خَمْرًا يَعْنِي سَيِّدُهُ. So it says that Rabb in this context means like his master, his Sayyid. And this is mentioned in two of the Mukhalifin tafsirs. So any narration, and also it says that, okay, يعني Sayyidu, and the one who possesses them. So the one who has ownership over them and is their type of master. And we find in our narrations, if Rabb was used for the Imam, would it be used in the sense of just saying the Imam is Rabb, or would it be used in a context with another noun? Now what we find is that our narrations clearly distinguish and show what? They show that when the Rabb has been used for the Imam, it has been used in a context which clearly shows that it is not in the context of divine lordship. Rather, it is in the context of other things that we have mentioned according to various Arabic dictionaries. And this is why we have to be careful of the Ghulat who say Ali Rabb, because they have a very sinister intention behind this, to call Imam Ali alayhi salam a god and give him a type of divine lordship. Let us go to Basair ad-Darajat to see how we can speak about, how we can analyze the meaning of Rabb and how it can pertain to one of the Imams in the non-Lordship sense. If we accept this narration in our Aqidah, and if we accept it to be taken for our Aqidah. So we go to page 109, a narration of Imam Baqir alayhi salam, where he was asked about a few issues. And Imam Baqir alayhi salam was asked about one of the verses of the Holy Quran. سألت أبا جعفر عن قول الله تعالى وكان الكافر على ربه ظهيرا. So Imam Baqir alayhi salam, he was asked about the following verse, and he gave the esoteric type of tafsir for this verse, and we'll put the verse across the screen. And he says قال تفسيرها في بطن القرآن يعني علي هو ربه في الولاية والطاعة والرب هو الخالق الذي لا يوصف. So Imam Baqir alayhi salam, in this narration, he clearly makes a distinction that the word Rabb, when it was used for the Imam, was not in the sense of the divine lordship. What does he say? He says that the esoteric tafsir of this particular verse, so that the disbeliever on his Lord was a partisan, he said that the esoteric tafsir is that Imam Ali alayhi salam, the disbeliever against Imam Ali, would be against Imam Ali a partisan in wilaya and ta'a, that Imam Ali alayhi salam is the Rabb in the sense, the master of what? Divine authority and obedience. And the Rabb, so the Al is used here, and the Rabb and the Lord is the Khaliq, the creator who cannot be described. So we find that Rabb here is used in the mudaf ilay sense. Rabb in this narration, as Imam Baqir alayhi salam says in the esoteric interpretation of the verse, states that Imam Ali alayhi salam is the Rabb, meaning what? Like the Sayyid, the master, when it comes to the divine authority, wilaya, and the obedience. And then the Imam makes a very clear differentiation and distinction that the Rabb, the Lord, is only Allah Azza wa Jal, the creator who cannot be described. So if we look at the meaning of Rabb according to the narrations, where it uses this word for Imam Ali alayhi salam, then we would see that it uses it in the sense just like the verse of the Holy Quran did, meaning someone who has a high status or type of authority. And Imam Baqir alayhi salam clearly showed in this narration that the Rabb is Allah Azza wa Jal, the creator of all things who cannot be described, and the Rabb of the obedience and divine authority is Imam Ali. So no one can come, no ghali, no exaggerator can come and use these narrations to just say Ali Rabb in this sense, because this would indicate something different. Rather, this narration can be used to show that the Rabb is used in this type of linguistic sense, where it does not relate to shirk, and it relates to the obedience and divine authority in the linguistic sense. This is why, dear brothers and sisters, we have to be very careful of these exaggerators, where they say Ali Rabb with a meaning behind it that Imam Ali alayhi salam is Allah. But when you ask them, okay, what do you mean Ali Rabb? They say, no, Rabb has many different meanings. They start playing around with the meaning of Rabb. They play around with words, and they may even want to quote some narrations which does not justify their types of impermissible and polytheistic sayings of saying Ali Rabb, or Hussein Rabb, or Hussein becomes a Rabb. So they cannot use this narration. In fact, this narration refutes their type of usage of this word, because when the first meaning, when one hears the word Rabb, when most people hear the word Rabb, would be Allah Azza wa Jal, would be divine lordship. So this phrase cannot be used without the context where, for example, one says Rabbul Wilaya, so the Rabb of divine authority, the Rabb of obedience, meaning corresponding to the same meaning in the Mukhalifin tafsirs, where Rabb can mean Sayyid, and the same meaning which is given in the verse of the Holy Quran as used by one of the prophets. One cannot use such narrations to justify their sayings where they call Ali Rabb. And we even have, dear brothers and sisters, where Imam Ali alayhi salam, he in fact condemned those who they came to him and punished those where they said, Assalamu alayka ya Rabbana. They said, peace be upon you, O our Lord. So they called Imam Ali alayhi salam their Lord in this sense, and he punished them for that. They did not say in the wadaf ilayh sense, where it would clearly distinguish that it is not giving him the divine status of lordship. And even we see some of these Ghulat, for example, there's a group well known in Germany for going everywhere and doing their matam. They say directly on their Facebook, on their Instagram, Ali subhanahu wa ta'ala, a'udhu billah, Mawla Matam, or something like, I'll put the screenshot here if I can remember it correctly. When you see this type of saying, or someone saying Ali Rabb, or saying that, for example, Hussein becomes Rabb, or Imam Ali becomes Rabb, or the Prophet, or whoever who is not a Lord, then you can clearly see that they are doing Ghulu and a type of exaggeration which contradicts the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. The Imams have plenty of virtues and praises for one to be going around and saying that they are Rabb, which is not a correct statement, because the hadith refutes them on this, where the term Rabb was not used in that sense, where you just say Ali Rabb, Hussein Rabb. And as we said, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he punished those who came up to him and said, our Lord. So one needs to be very careful and understand the agenda of the Ghulat. So the conclusion for this episode, dear brothers and sisters, we go back to the clip. The context, unfortunately, which was uttered by Zameer Naqvi, where he said Hussein becomes Rabb, would be understood by all that he means that Hussein, a'udhu billah, becomes God. Now some will say, no, he didn't believe this, of course, but they need to show a context for this, because he said Rabb in the sense of lordship. Or maybe he didn't say it in the sense of lordship, but the sense in which he said it, or the way in which he said it in front of audience, would clearly denote that. And of course, some, as we said, they may just say this to antagonize the Mukhalifin, where they use it in other contexts, but in the current climate this should be avoided, because as we know, there is a lot of exaggeration going around, and unless one really clarifies as to what they mean, then it could be taken in the wrong way. So the conclusion for this episode is that if we take these narrations and accept them for Aqidah, there is no way in the Shia books that the word Rabb pertains to divine lordship of the Imams. Rather, it is used in the types of linguistic sense of master, governor, one with authority, and a high person, as we showed in the narration. So for the brothers who obviously they may be followers or supporters of Zameer Naqvi, they should take it upon themselves to subtitle anything which they may believe gives a context. But to say Hussein becomes rabb is a completely wrong statement, and is something which one is falling into shirk by uttering. So inshallah ta'ala, what we'll do is we'll go to the next episode and we will show another clip which has been presented of some exaggerated poetry, and whether this also conforms to the narrations of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So please join me for the third episode. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum wa la'ana a'dahum.